Hello, BookTube. I'm here with a book tag. I am quite late at getting to the I Want to Believe tag, and I was tagged by Jason Harrigan at Byways in Bookland. He did his version on the 10th of June, so I am very late getting to this, so I do apologize, Jason. Originally done by Rajathon, and there are 10, 11 prompts, and let's get to it. It's related to the X Files, though, which I never watched. I was not a fan of. I couldn't stand the cardboard acting and just the terrible acting, mainly by all and sundry. Um, I'm sure if I was 9, 10 years old at the time, I may have enjoyed it for the schlock uh, fest of it. But I was too old for that, so I never bothered with it. But I do understand. I know that it has a huge following. Fair enough. The first prompt is number one, pilot, a great beginning to a series or trilogy. Now, keeping with science fiction, it would be Dune. Um, no questions there. However, there are a few exceptions that are still good in my opinion that I really enjoyed was Hyperion by Dan Simmons for the Hyperion Cantos. Um, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Um, for what is it? Trilogy in 5 parts. And Inherit the Stars by James B. Hogan, the beginning of the Giants series. So yeah, those are good contenders, I think, for Dune. Number two, Squeeze. Toombs was my favorite monster in the series. I don't know what Toombs is. The only time I think of that name, well, I think of a couple of things, but I think of an old professor, Dr. Larry Toombs, that I had at university for archaeology. He had retired several years before I started my studies, but because they were short of specialists for certain topics, they would bring him back, and I had him for at least a year, maybe 2 years, I think it was. Fabulous guy. We got along extremely well, and I found out later we had the same birthday, so maybe that had something to do with it. But no, but he was no monster in any shape or form. Um, but the question is, what is your favorite monster in a book? Well, I don't know about favorite, but I would say any book that has Donald Trump in it. Number three, the ErlenMeyer Flask, the one where they find a baby alien. What is the best sci-fi you have ever read? Well, this is where I'm going to distinguish between sci-fi and science fiction. For sci-fi, which I class the X Files under, um, and I would say for sci-fi, some of my best I enjoyed was Doc Smith's Lensman series and his Skylark series. They are just a fabulous romp through them. For science fiction now, the best is by no question is I usually find it difficult to say what the best book of X is, but for science fiction, it's Frank Herbert's Dune. No holds barred. It's just definitely. But the other ones that I mentioned, like Hyperion, is well. Let's use Hyperion as a stand-in. Not the best stand-in, but in my opinion, maybe the best you could find for Dune. Number four, Clyde Bruckman's final response. This is the only episode that won an Emmy. What is your favorite book? Now that's where I find it difficult. Favorite science fiction book? That's easy. Dune. My favorite book? I suppose it depends on the mood at the time. But I do have some all-time favorites, so I'll choose the one that's sort of on the top of my mind at the moment is Gargantuan Pantagruel by Rabelais. It's not only a fabulous book, it is fabulously funny. Number 5, Jose Chungs from Outer Space, a funny abduction episode. What is the funniest book you have ever read? Again, that is very difficult. The aforementioned Gargantuan Pantagruel is extremely funny. I find Three Men in a Boat by Jerome K. Jerome extremely funny. Uh, the the I think of his name now. Diary of a Nobody, Weidenfeld and Goldsmith, I think it is. That's fabulous funny. Uh, no, those are both from the late 1800s. More recent, I would say Kingsley Amis, Lucky Jim, and Tom Sharp's. Probably that might be the newest. A Porterhouse Blue. Other ones are like the Rumpole, John Mortimer's Rumpole books. More situational there, but some fabulous wit in there. And anything by P.G. Wodehouse would definitely. And even Jerome K. Anything else by Jerome K. Jerome I find very good. Number 6, Home. This episode was very disturbing and was never aired on TV. What is the most disturbing thing that you have ever read? There are 2. And I read them in the news. They weren't surprising, but they're the most disturbing and terrifying thing that I have read and experiencing. Donald Trump becoming president of the United States of America, and Boris Johnson becoming Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Terrifying. Number 7, Postmodern Prometheus. This is a black and white Frankenstein style episode. What is your favorite classic book? Again, very difficult to do. I like most of the Greek and Roman classics to a lesser, greater degree. Herodotus is fabulous. I've read, not recently, but I've read several times, and I carried him around when I went to the Middle East. So it's a hard choice between him and Cicero. Cicero's murder trials. Maybe some of his letters mixed in. But yeah, let's just stick with the murder trials because that's a Penguin book that I keep going back to. But also like Pliny's letters. I thoroughly enjoy. Number 8, Bad Blood. In this episode, Mulder kills a vampire, or he thinks he does, and then tells the story in all flashbacks. What is your favorite way they use flashbacks to tell a story? Now, like Jason, I think sometimes flashbacks are not handled well. But when I think of things like Sherlock Holmes, the whole story, the whole idea is a flashback. It's a flashback that Watson is telling the story. Or on a few occasions, it was Holmes in the later ones. I think 2 stories that he narrated. But besides that, there's still a flashback in that sense, telling something that happened before. There's so many of them like that. Dracula. So many flashbacks in there. Letters, diary entries, newspaper articles, recordings, all sorts of things. They're all sort of a flashback because each entry is read after the fact, and it's So there's a lot that are like that, and those are I think done well. Number 9, Drive. A man jumps into Mulder's car and they speed through the entire episode. What book have you read that is a non-stop ride? Again, that's, I find, if somebody is able to sustain that kind of not so much suspense, but high octane sort of action, the book becomes trite because of that. And if they don't do it, then it's not nonstop. So it's a catch-22 there for me. But saying that, there are a few books that have that sort of kept me going. Like, I thought was just fabulous, chapter after chapter after chapter. Not in the way of this nonstop, but nonstop in interest. And God's Graves and Scholars by Saram. It was one that did that to me. Nicholas Basbane's Gentle Madness just kept me turning page after page. But fiction-wise, there was one that I discovered. It probably was around 2010-ish, I would think. I was reading, I was going through all of Stephen Fry's books at that time, and I stumbled upon one that Hugh Laurie wrote, a fiction book called The Gun Seller. I think he wrote it sometime in the early 90s. So I picked that up, and I was fabulously surprised. It not only was very funny, but it was fast paced. It sort of rolled along and rocked along, and it's a really good book. Well, at least I remember it at the time. I've only read it once. I would like to pick it up again to see. There were rumors, I think, that he'd written a sequel, and I'll have to take a look, and maybe he has. Number 10, Milagro. This episode's I must be in this episode, a book becomes reality when the author writes it. What is a book setting that you would never want to go to? Yeah, I suppose Jason sort of said it would be Dante. Would probably be the best answer there. However, I suppose anything where there is, sort of fascism coming back in and racist presidents, the United States gets put in to power, and he's basically insane. And then, oh, wait a minute, that's not a book. But there are books about that. But that's the terrifying reality we live in now, with at least two insane leaders, Boris Johnson in the UK and Donald J. Trump in the United States. Just terrifying. Now, bonus question. I hope the smoking man is in this one. And then there's brackets, 1 week bare naked ladies. I'm assuming that's to the horrible group, Canadian group, bare naked ladies. What is your favorite side character in a book? Now, there's so many, and some are done so badly as sort of the exposition. It's like early science fiction where you would have somebody just exposition of an explanation of what's happening. And the scary thing is you still see that a lot on TV shows at times. And I've just recently watched a few things that are just, no, you don't need to explain it 6 times from everywhere. We already got it. And if you don't, well, tough. Too bad. But in general, sidekicks, I think Watson to Holmes, Hastings to Poirot, yeah, and any of those work out really well, like Worcester to Jeeves. I was thinking of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but which one is the side character? Is it Ford Prefect? Or is it Arthur Dent? or neither? I'm not sure with that. If you've got an answer, BookTube, do put it in the comments. Is Dent a side character, or is it Ford Prefect a side character, or neither? I'm gonna have to think about this a little more. I might need to actually reread Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy at some point, just to satisfy my curiosity on that. But anyway, there ends the I want to believe tag. And thank you, Jason, for uh, tagging me in this. And I'm not a fan of, so I do apologize. But I took the questions as they were, as much as I can understand them. I know X Files has a huge fan base. So anybody else who is a fan of X Files and probably can bring better light to the questions than I could, because they can understand the references to the episodes, which I couldn't in any shape or form. But feel free if you are a fan and like the questions, do a video. See you next time, BookTube. Take care.